how can I be gracious and kind to myself so that I can move towards change in a way that isn't overwhelming and still honoring of our traditions. I think the world needs us to change, needs us to think about whether I'm going to buy a plastic toy for my child or not. Creation needs us to consider those things because we can't keep living like we've lived the last few decades. We have to choose to make other choices.
Welcome to the Earthkeepers Podcast. This podcast is for people who seek new and better ways to love and care for the earth. It's a podcast for anyone who is deeply concerned about the harm being done to the environment on a local and global level. It's a podcast that builds community and connection between people of like heart and mind, people who believe that earth care should be integrated into every aspect of life, and for many in the Earthkeepers community, that includes our spiritual lives. Welcome, friends, to the Earthkeepers Podcast. Greetings, Earthkeepers. As we near the end of this calendar year, we've put together a special episode to encourage all of us to think about ways we can reimagine our holiday practices. To that end, I'll be in conversation with Abby Fehrsen of Capetown, South Africa. You might remember Abby from an Earthkeepers episode that she hosted earlier this year, and from an interview in Season 3, in which she and Liesl Stewart told us about their work helping communities to source their food in sustainable, earth-honoring ways from local producers. Well, in this episode, we'll be talking about how she and her family have creatively adapted their celebration practices to become greener. And toward the end of this episode, we'll hear some holiday greetings from a number of Earthkeepers all around the world. Abby, welcome. We're so glad to have your wisdom here in this conversation about Christmas and New Year's and solstice practices. And I know that you've thought quite a lot about these things. And I'll just start actually with a point of curiosity for me. In the Northern Hemisphere, it's really easy to connect to all the Christmas images that are stereotypically supposed to be how we think about the holiday. Sleigh bells and snow and evergreens. And that's even strange for a context like mine because we don't often have snow at Christmas, but still is part of the way we think about it. In the Southern Hemisphere, it's just got to be so different for you because it's a summertime holiday. I'm just wondering, tell us what is that like? And do you actually feel any tension with the way that Christmas is conventionally framed in the stories and songs that we know?
Yes, thank you, Forrest, for inviting me to be part of this conversation. I love Christmas. And I also struggle with it. I live with such a tension, but it is warm. It is warm. I live in the southern part of Cape Town, so on the peninsula of Cape Town in South Africa. So we have a summer breeze. We have the southeaster blowing. So it's a slightly cooler temperature than other parts. Further inland, it will be much warmer. And obviously in other parts of South Africa, even just quite hot. So it is definitely quite different to what you would experience in the Northern Hemisphere. It's often a beautifully warm and balmy day. It's a day that we prepare for weeks in advance. I remember growing up in my family home, my mom would be cleaning windows and doing spring cleaning, and there's just a real anticipation for the Advent season that includes physical preparation of your home. Being a person of color, my parents didn't have lots of money, so the preparation would start much earlier in the year, months in advance. My mom would be saving extra money so that she could afford to spend more on food as she usually did. And often that would be the time of year that I would get my set of summer clothing. Things like gifts wasn't really something that I got lots of growing up, my siblings and I. Money would have been spent on food and clothing and sometimes gifts, but not a lot. But just thinking about Christmas, I think there is a certain nostalgia that I certainly live with and grew up with around Christmas time and preparing for Christmas. obviously there's all the music and the songs and the shops, similar to what it should be like in the Northern Hemisphere. There's a real push for people to spend and prepare for this magical time of year. But for my family, I think it was simple, but food was such a pivotal part of our celebration. It was such a central part of the day. And in fact, it didn't only last one day. It was a 3-day celebration or a 2-day celebration. Not for my family per se, but for my extended family. Some would include Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and the day after Christmas as part of their celebrations. In my family, the whole extended family would gather at my mom's house. And in fact, as she got older, she was the only aunt within our extended family that was still alive. And so our home really became a hub. And it's a big meal. When I think about it now, it feels so indulgent in a way that doesn't always sit comfortably with me. And so as I've become older, I've wanted to find ways to simplify the meal that's still special, still memorable, but just simplified, because it really, South Africa's got a diverse range of cultures. And in Cape Town, there's such a beautiful blend of Cape Malay culture and African culture and even influence. There's roast on the table, which is probably more British, I would imagine. Maybe that's where it comes from. And so the table is filled with color and just beautiful food. But it does often, I remember, coming to the end of a Christmas meal and realizing how indulgent it was and feeling like there are people hungry today. Like it was always such a sinking feeling by the end of the day, because it's such an insular family time and it can be so indulgent. And maybe a bit later on, I can share some of my thoughts and ideas about how to make it more inclusive. But there will just be curries and cold meats and side dishes and desserts. It's a big family day where extended family often gathers together. But it's a warm day. It's often in Cape Town, it often rains on Christmas Day, but the sun often comes out late in the day. But it is so different. And yet, so many of us aspire to the Northern Hemisphere Christmas sometimes. We want the green pine tree. We want the warmer foods that you may enjoy in the Northern Hemisphere. So I think it's a real tension. But yeah, it's a big family day.
You mentioned that the tradition of having a roast on the table is probably British. I mean, so much of Christmas food tradition, at least as we know it in the North, is prescribed by a Northern European context, right? And so turkey, for example, will be a must-have for some families. But I'm wondering, do things like that make sense all the time in South Africa? The kinds of foods that are traditionally associated with Christmas, at least in a lot of the songs and stories.
That's such an important question, actually. I ponder it a lot. In fact, some of your listeners may have listened to our podcast with you previously, where we spoke about being part of this alternative food system and having a food club where we're sourcing good food directly from suppliers and farmers. And in fact, I recall a few years ago, one of our meat suppliers had put turkey on the order list. And as always, typically when new items get added to our order list, we would make inquiries to understand where this is being sourced from, etc. And because there is for some people this aspiration to copy some of the Northern Hemisphere traditions, some people would rather have a roast turkey on their table than a roast chicken, which typically my family would have chosen to have a roast chicken. And so upon investigation, we discovered that the turkey that the supplier was offering was actually imported from South America. And that, of course, was completely counter to what we were wanting to support as part of our food system and our food club. And so we had to make the valued choice. Actually, we're not going to include turkeys on our order list because, of course, we don't want to be supporting importing goods from another country. Didn't support our values, so we had to make the choice not to. But certainly, maybe not 10, 15 years ago, but now you can find turkey in a local store in South Africa.
Well, it brings up such a good point that I think we need to be cautious and careful, intentional and thoughtful all the time about the food choices we make, to understand where they're sourced from, to understand that when we can make more earth-friendly choices, we need to do that. But in a way, perhaps Christmas as a holiday gives us an opportunity to be particularly aware of that. I mean, given the values behind Christmas, maybe it's a time we ought to think more intentionally about what it is we're eating, where we're getting that food from, even how we're preparing that. In this case, the turkey is such a good example of something that, with some thought, you actually made the choice not to have a turkey despite the pressure of tradition, as we put it before. So in terms of making choices, what kinds of things ought people to be thinking about as they think about the food they're buying and preparing for holiday?
I think one of the ways that we can be more conscious and thoughtful about that is, I think one of the things that I've struggled with most through the years, I'm in my 40s, so I've had many Christmases, but the idea of simplifying the meal in a way that is able to honor your values around the carbon footprint. So trying to buy from local farmers, suppliers, shops as much as possible. I think certainly for my family, being selective of what meat do we want to consume if we are going to be eating meat. So I grew up with a selection of 4 or 5 different meats. I think for my family, it would be what is the 1 or 2 meats that we want to include in our meal so that we're not spending excessively as well. I often say to my kids, it's Jesus's birthday. When it comes to remembering him, and even with gifts, just simplifying it. So staying on topic about the food, I think those are certainly some of the practical ways that I know for our family, we try and eat food from as close to our home, that has been farmed as close to our home as possible, and simplifying the meal in a way that still feels celebratory, but just simplifying it so that it's not overindulgent. I think that certainly, I'd never want to leave a Christmas meal feeling like, oh, I've overindulged. And I know there's so many families that have so little. I want to be able to feel like I can share. And I think that actually brings me to the second thing that I wanted to say, that I learned this from my husband's family, actually. And in fact, Mike's family have a very simple supper. It's usually will be 1 meat and it'll be side dishes and salads. And it's just a very simple meal. But around gift giving, I learned something so valuable from their family, is that they encourage each other to give a gift towards an organization or a charity that they want to support. There's no exchange of gifts between the adults. When we all started having kids, that changed because the kids struggle with that. It's harder to kind of practice these habits with kids. But even there, so that is something that we practice, is that instead of buying gifts for each other, we will support a friend or someone that we know of that is struggling around that time of the year. You really can get creative. Sometimes it's a bigger organization, sometimes it's a smaller organization. And thirdly, what I wanted to say about gift giving is that even for the kids, that we've really encouraged our kids to remember that it's Jesus's birthday. And so when it's their birthday, we will celebrate them and they will get a really special gift. But at Christmas time, we give them a simple gift. Even amongst my 3 girls, they won't get 3 gifts. They will get 1 gift, and it'll be 1 gift from mom and the 2 sisters. And so rather than them having lots of different gifts, they will each get 1 gift. And similarly, between their cousins, we will often give a shared gift for a family unit or an experience. Last year, my kids got a show to a ballet, which is not cheap. So that's a very privileged thing for them to enjoy. And so they didn't get a Christmas gift in a package. It was an experience that they were gifted. And then there's gift wrapping. Oh, my kids dislike me a lot because I never buy gift wrapping paper. To their disappointment, Mom, can we please have some Christmas paper with Christmas patterns on? Always say no. So to their disappointment, that's just something I've just always said. We're going to use newspaper, or we've often got craft paper in the house that they can decorate the craft paper. I know friends have given me gifts that they've used old magazine paper. They've cut out and wrapped a gift in that. There's just so many creative ways that we can wrap our gifts. That doesn't mean that we spending money on gift wrapping, and also using paper Let's save the trees.
Do you know my favorite repurposed gift wrap is maps?
Ah, how do you end up with so many maps?
I know, you can get them very cheaply. Probably this won't last too much longer because people don't use maps so much anymore, but at thrift stores and garage sales, you can get maps for pennies. But it's just so evocative to have a package that's wrapped in a map. I think it's way more exciting than wrapping paper. Speaking of gifts and donating to good causes, let's take a quick break in our conversation to hear from our executive producer, James Amadon.
Hello, everyone, and happy holidays. My name is James Amadon, and I'm the executive director of Circlewood, the organization behind the Earthkeepers Podcast. I also help produce the podcast and am an occasional co-host with Forrest. I hope that you have found the podcast informative, inspiring, and helpful to you as you pursue your own journey of earthkeeping. We are getting close to releasing our 100th episode, and we're not only excited about this milestone, but we're eager to get to work on the next 100 as well. The podcast is offered to listeners freely, but there are significant costs to plan, record, produce, and release each episode. All this is made possible through the generosity of donors. And as we near the end of the year, I invite you to join this generous community through a year-end gift. A gift of any size can help us continue to grow and expand the podcast and reach new listeners. Giving is really easy. Just go to the Earthkeepers website, earthkeepers.online, and click on the donation link. Gifts are tax-deductible and all your information will be kept private. Thank you for listening to Earthkeepers and for all you do to care for the earth.
Well, it sounds to me that as you talk about this thoughtful way of celebration, there are a lot of opportunities for education. It sounds like, I'm guessing, that when you're choosing, for example, the person or organization that you're donating to in lieu of gifts, that you're talking about the why. Like, why does it make sense for us to do this and give to this person at this time? Or if you're talking about the foods that you're eating, it strikes me as an opportunity for education about the values behind the choices. And that would apply, I think, not only to the adults, but of course to the kids as well. Do you find that's true, that education is part of making these choices, these alternative choices?
It is very much so. And I find that those conversations obviously happen with my 3 girls primarily. And the one example is with choosing a Christmas tree. I grew up with a tinsel tree, so just the plastic. So I grew up with that in my household. And so when we had kids, we kind of were finding our way in what would become our own family's traditions around Christmas. I think for 2 Christmases, we did a live Christmas tree, which you can get in South Africa. It's a Christmas thing. You can drive on down the road and you'll see them on the side of the road. Pretty much what I'm imagining would be similar in the Northern Hemisphere.
Well, are these cut down trees or are they potted up?
They just cut down. So they will be often part of a tree.
So live tree in quotes.
Yes. Not so living, but yes. And so, in those early days as a young family, we were trying to figure out what are the most important things that we want to adopt from our previous nuclear families and hate in our own families. And so we did, for a couple of years, do a living tree. And we then quickly worked out, actually, we can't do this. This is not how we want to encourage sustainability in the world and care for our creation, because those trees are not indigenous to South Africa. Pine trees are not indigenous. They are very high water users, and that is not the kind of resource we want to waste, especially in South Africa, because they're not indigenous. And so I did a bit of research and I discovered, Google becomes our friend in moments like that, and Pinterest, and there's so many different ways that we can do a tree. And I discovered that there was someone along the southern coast of South Africa that was actually collecting driftwood along the coast, along the beaches and the rivers, and creating these driftwood trees. And I thought, that's far more African. Like, I love the idea. It just would be these dry wooden sticks of different sizes. We now have one, which we've used for probably about 4 or 5 years. But even that transition from the living tree to that wooden tree, my kids struggled. It was not easy for them. And so slowly but surely, each year we would put up our wooden tree and we would have conversations about, it's not just about the tree. We are remembering Jesus' birth. And actually, this is a far more sustainable way and a more responsible way for us to not be cutting down trees every Christmas. So that's been work for us. Our kids didn't love it in the beginning. And in fact, the first year, I converted a teepee tent, a kids' play tent, took off the cloth and wrapped hessian around it and hung ornaments all around it and lit it up and made it pretty and Christmassy, in my opinion. My kids did not appreciate my creativity. So it's a work in progress, but I think my kids love the tree now. And I just encourage families when you're facing these choices that it does take time, but you just keep doing it. And eventually my kids give up fighting, I guess. But they love it now.
You've also involved them in decorating, right? Because they create some of the ornaments. So does that help them to be more engaged, more invested?
Absolutely, absolutely. So every Christmas they now are 13, 11, and 7. And my 2 older girls were at preschool and they would be the ones bringing the ornaments home. And we still use the big yellow star and the angel that they made when they were 4 and 5. And so it looks, to some people it might look messy, but it's such a creative expression of, I guess, a reflection of the world. It's not orderly and organized that maybe the Christmas tree you would see in a shop, but it's just a fun expression of creativity, which I think some people might find that hard. Some people might prefer a more organized looking Christmas tree, but we love it. Heading a few weeks from Christmas, my kids will be asking me before the end of November, Mom, when can we put up the tree? So, yeah.
Well, I think importantly, it sounds like you've allowed the learning and experimentation to happen over time. So it wasn't that from the get-go, your first family Christmas with you and your husband, it wasn't incorporating all these values. That little by little, you discovered how to express Christmas, how to celebrate Christmas over time in different ways by experimenting and trying things. But I do think it's overwhelming sometimes to think, oh, I've got to change everything right away. And I think that's just not the case. I think incremental learning and experimenting is probably the better way to go for anyone who wants to try these alternative, almost countercultural approaches to celebration.
Absolutely. I've experienced that in many ways in my food journey. When I was facing these important decisions about how my family and I eat differently, it felt so overwhelming. And I discovered making small choices bit by bit. I'm not going to buy cut vegetables in packages. It's one small step I can make for the next 2 months. Then, okay, I'm not going to buy packaged potato chips, frozen potato chips. I'm going to buy myself a potato chip cutter. And so those are the principles that I adopted with making changes with how we bought our food, where we bought our food from, how we ate. And I think the same applies, like you said, when we're making these choices, especially when there's so much tradition and emotion attached to celebrating Christmas, like many other celebrations, is that just make one choice each year that better supports creation care. Just one small thing. And over time, it certainly does make a meaningful difference.
Well, you make such a good point, I think, when you talk about the weight of tradition. I think when we have traditions, even if it's just family traditions, we don't often think to question them, right? Nor are we always willing to open ourselves to the idea of change. It almost seems sacrosanct. And yet, if you look at it that way, and if that's in fact the way you allow tradition to call the shots, so to speak, really you're being oppressed by traditions.
Yeah, they are not easy things to shift. And so I guess my question to myself is, how can I be gracious and kind to myself so that I can move towards change in a way that isn't overwhelming and still honoring of our traditions? But I think the world needs us to change, needs us to think about whether I'm going to buy a plastic toy for my child or not. creation needs us to consider those things because we can't keep living like we've lived the last few decades. We have to choose to make other choices.
So one of the really important things for most people who celebrate the holidays around New Year's, Christmas, Hanukkah, all of those things, is family, is community, is getting together with other people, which is a good thing, right? Obviously, we need to value that. But I'm wondering, are there things about community and thinking about who is part of celebrations that have changed for you over time as you've been more thoughtful about Christmas practices?
Yes, I have given this quite a bit of thought because, like I explained earlier, often at the end of a big extended family gathering, by the end of Christmas Day, I just would have this sinking feeling, like being conscious of that I know there may be people that I know in my broader church community perhaps who may not be close to family on that day because they work in South Africa, but their family is in another country. And I think the biggest challenge for me often was I was invited to my family home, and so I didn't often feel comfortable extending the invitation. Often I ended a Christmas meal being so conscious of those that weren't at our table, people part of our extended church community or friendship circles who work in South Africa. Their family home is in another country. And often my tension would be I was invited to a family member's home, and so I didn't always feel free to extend the invitation to someone else. So that's often something that was hard. But obviously now it feels a little bit different because my parents are no longer with us. And so there's a little bit more freedom to create a space and a time around Christmas time that I have influence over who I can include. And in fact, 2 years ago, we had a really special Christmas with my husband's family. We committed to doing Christmas together with his family every 3 years. So there are 2 years that we have some flexibility around how we do Christmas. And often with my siblings and extended family, we may choose to do something the Sunday before Christmas, as an example, not necessarily on Christmas Day. And a couple of years ago, maybe 2 years ago, we were just coming out of COVID and we were starting to gather with people again, and we didn't have any specific plans. And literally within 24 hours, I contacted one friend who's based in South Africa. She's from the UK and she was in town, and she had committed to doing a meal with another 2 friends who are from Cape Town, about a half an hour away from where we live. And then suddenly I said to her, hey, why don't we just do Christmas together? Literally, it must have been just a few hours before lunchtime. We decided to have a meal together, and it was such a joyful meal. I was just like, oh, thank you, God. I needed this. It was just such a beautiful, spontaneous meal with people that may not have been able to be together. All of us hadn't made lunch plans or made family commitments for that day. And so there was this flexibility. But I know that it's such, again, like you said, the traditions of Christmas, it's hard to include others. And so that was a spontaneous opportunity that happened, and we all desired to celebrate Christmas together. But when you have a commitment to spend time with your family, I guess maybe the conversation can be opened up ahead of Christmas with extended family. Please, may we include some people that may not be with their families this year. I guess we just need to be intentional.
You know, what strikes me about your story is you talked about the spontaneity of this thing coming together, but it sounds like everyone was involved in that decision to let's do this together. And here's the reason I feel like that's important. I have been invited to other people's Christmas celebrations, and when you're entering into other people's traditions, it can actually almost be worse than just being on your own because you feel like an outsider, and I felt the way. And even when I had my daughter with me, we've been asked to go to other people's celebrations, but it felt very much like we were standing on the outside looking in. And I left those experiences not with a great feeling. But I think it sounds like in your case, the key is when everyone is involved in planning, it belongs to everyone. It just makes me wonder if we ought not to be a bit more deliberate if we're going to include people who might not normally be in our family circle, say, to be more inclusive about who we have celebration with. It strikes me as important to include them in the planning and putting together of such events, because to not belong can be even more lonely than spending Christmas perhaps on your own if you are in a strange context.
That sounds spot on. I think you're right. Because we were all involved in planning it, made it meaningful for all of us in the way that we wanted it to be.
Abby, I appreciate you as always. Thanks for helping Earthkeepers all around the world think about how we might make changes to our celebratory practices. For our listeners, if you want to know more about Abby's work with food clubs in South Africa and to see pictures of her driftwood tree, go to the show notes at earthkeepers.online. Now, as we do every year, the Earthkeepers podcast will be taking a winter solstice break, so our next episode will be released in January for the start of Season 5. Before we go quiet for the rest of this month, though, we get to hear from a number of Earthkeepers from our global community as they offer us thoughts on their own green holiday practices.
Hello, Earthkeepers. My name is Daniel, and I live in County Durham in northeast England. I'd like to share with you something that I've really appreciated over the past few years. This is the New Year plant hunt organised by the Botanical Society of Britain and Ireland. It's very simple. You go out on one of the days immediately around January 1st and record how many different species of wild plant you can find actually in flower in the space of 3 hours. That may not be very many, especially if it's been cold, but there are often more than you'd expect, and the fun is in looking for them. There is a scientific element to this, as the results are collected and analysed in relation to the impact of climate change. But I also value a sense of community, with others taking part, as findings from all over the country start to appear on the interactive map. And then, in a season of hype and excess, there is the simple practice of paying close attention to what is small, fragile, and easily overlooked. For me, that connects with the story of Christ, coming among us, humble and hidden, like a foretaste of spring in winter. So friends, go out and see what you can find this Christmas time, and be blessed.
Earthkeepers, my name is Olcay, and I come from Turkey, a Muslim country. Here, many people adorn their homes with Christmas trees to celebrate the New Year, rather than Christmas itself. Influenced by movies and television, the tradition of having a Christmas tree, Santa Claus, and the exchange of gifts has been widely embraced, but culturally shifted to New Year's Day. When my first child was 3, I described Santa as a messenger for Jesus, delivering gifts on his behalf. I explained that Christmas is the birth of Jesus. It is his birthday. We even had a birthday cake with candles for Jesus. My son blew out the candles, making a wish for Jesus, and we all sang a happy birthday song for him. This birthday celebration has evolved into a family tradition over the past 15 years. Nowadays, we gather with other families to celebrate Jesus' birthday with a cake and candles. The youngest children blow out the candles, making wishes for Jesus, and then we sing Happy Birthday Jesus, or in Turkish, İyi ki doğdun İsa. This simple tradition deepens our sense of fellowship with the Lord and the family bond we share with Jesus, especially for our children.
Hi Earthkeepers, my name is Anna DeYoung, and I live in Seattle, Washington. Since our winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere is happening super soon, I wanted to share a couple of ways my family celebrates this important aspect of the changing of seasons. My family participates in a winter spiral, which is a spiral made of cedar boughs with a candle at the center. The invitation is to walk with an unlit candle towards the center and bring back your own light. This solstice event honors the light and the overcoming of dark. Another practice I really enjoy is that my family turns off one electric house light per day leading up to the solstice and replaces that light with a candle. This is a cozy time, and I feel like it celebrates the dark and the time to sleep in. Solstice blessings to you all!
Hello, Earthkeepers. Cholamot Borundishu Kanarolonga Metiunie. My name is Edward from Uganda, and I would like to talk about Christmas celebration here in my country. Generally, Christmas carries different vibes in rural and urban places. In big cities like Kampala, a Christmas day is pretty much like any other public holiday. And I think this is because we do not put up lights all over the places or go on a shopping rampage. Also, very few people decorate the Christmas tree or give and receive presents. Mainly, however, Christmas is perceived as a sacred event, and most Christians attend church services in the morning and then the rest of the day with family and friends. The main focus of Christmas is remembering the birth and mission of the Messiah, but this is also a day we share a chicken, a goat, local drinks, and good time with friends. During my childhood in my village, we found quite a unique pleasure to celebrate Christmas in our own way. We bought new clothes and shoes to kind of show off on Christmas Day. It was a big deal. We looked forward to Christmas all year round, and we still do. Well, I want to take this opportunity to wish you all a merry and a COVID-free Christmas of 2023. Jam karama, anyalalar, aben.
สวัสดีค่ะ Earthkeepers. My name is Nee and I'm from Thailand. Today I would like to share how we celebrate us here in Thailand, especially in the small village. Since the Christian is very small community in the village, so we would go to church on Christmas Day. Our pastor would read the Bible about when Jesus was born and explained the real Christmas, how Jesus gave his life to us. And after that, at the end, we would sing Joy to the World song together. After we finished the morning, in the afternoon, we would cook together and then we would share food and just hang out. And in the afternoon, we would sit into a small group and then we would share the blessing the whole year that God has blessed us all. It's very peaceful. This Christmas, I wish you guys สุขสันต์วันคริสต์มาสค่ะ
Bonjour, Earthkeepers. My name is Carla Blunchley, and I'm doing the voiceover translation for my good friend Mimrose Beaubrun.
Oui, fête Noël sont bail spécial pour nous tous.
Yes, the Noel celebration is special for us too.
C'est pas nous dire Noël nous-mêmes, non.
Other people call it a leaf bath. All leaves in nature. You do this so you can recenter yourself with the Mother Earth. People go out and gather leaves to get rid of bad moods, bad spirits, bad luck, and leaves too that are blessed, that give good luck. The energy from Mother Earth. And all this energy comes from the sun. So it's the sun that gives them the energy, so it's to celebrate the sun too. Together with Mother Earth and the leaves. It's to get recharged. You become a new person, cleansed. Take charge of your life again, of your body again, because each year you begin a new cycle.
Marhaban Jami'an. My name is Jawad Hadadin. I am from Amman, Jordan. So Christmas in Jordan is centered around family gatherings. We'd spent a lot of time visiting family members. We don't really engage much in exchanging of gifts. Rather, we'd spend time arranging food packages for vulnerable families in different communities around Jordan. I'd also like to be reminded of the essence of Christmas and that which has been done on the cross for us. That is the love of Jesus. And also to be more like Christ in character. And if we become more like Christ in character, then we are automatically transformed into becoming more compassionate human beings. And this means becoming more appreciative of green practices. So my message for you is, let's become greener by becoming more like Christ in character. Let's be compassionate towards one another and towards the environment we live in. Eid Milad Majid. Merry Christmas to all. Lots of love from Jordan. Wishing you a great time with your families.
Friends, with those beautiful words from the Global Earthkeepers community, we bring Season 4 of the podcast to a close. From all of us on the podcast production team, We encourage you to get outside in the coming weeks and to let nature remind you of the ways that Creator is present in every aspect of creation, wherever we are on this beautiful planet we love.